We began to slow dance in our little corner of the bar. Eyes started to turn our way. What was I doing? What had happened to me? Whatever it was, it felt so good to be doing it. Is this okay? Matt checked. You know, actually, it's great. What is this song, anyway? You said it was your favorite. Oh, I have no idea, Suzanne. I just wanted an excuse to hold you close. With that, Matt held me a little tighter. I loved being in his arms. I loved it. Corny maybe, but absolutely true. What can I say? I felt a little dizzy as we spun around in rhythm with the music. I have a question to ask you, he whispered, against the side of my ear. Okay, I whispered back. How do you feel about us so far? I kissed him. Like that? He smiled. That's how I feel, too. Good. I lived with somebody for 3 years, Matt said. We met while we were at Brown. The vineyard wasn't right for her, but it was for me. 4 years, another doctor, I confessed. Matt leaned in and lightly kissed me on the lips again. Would you come home with me tonight, Suzanne? He asked. I want to do some more dancing. I told him I would love to. I have this wink that Matt calls Suzanne's famous wink. I did it for the first time to Matt that night. He loved it. Matt's house was a small Victorian covered in gingerbread lace that draped itself over the eaves and softened all the corners. The trellises, banisters, and overhangs looked as if they'd been lifted off some elaborately trimmed wedding cake and carefully placed around the rims of the roofs. This was the first time I had been invited, and I was suddenly nervous. My mouth was cottony and dry. I hadn't been with anyone like this since Michael, and that was still a bad memory for me. We went inside, and I immediately noticed a library. The room had been remodeled to be made up of nothing but shelves. There were thousands of books in there. My eyes traveled up and down the bookshelves. Scott Fitzgerald, John Cheever, Virginia Woolf, Anais Nin, Thomas Merton, Doris Lessing. An entire wall was devoted to collections of poetry. W.H. Auden, Wallace Stevens, Hart Crane, Sylvia Plath, James Wright, Elizabeth Bishop, Robert Hayden, and many, many more. There was an antique globe, an old English pond boat, its sails stained and listing, some nautical brass fittings, a big pine table covered in writing pads and miscellaneous papers. I love this room. Can I look around? I asked. I love it too. Of course you can look. I was totally surprised by the cover page on the top of a stack of pages. It read, Songs of a House Painter, Poems by Matthew Harrison. Matt was a poet. He hadn't told me about it. He really didn't like to talk about himself, did he? What other secrets did he have? Okay, yes, he admitted quietly. I do some scribbling, that's all it is. I've had the bug since I was 16, and I've been trying to work it out since I left Brown. I majored in English and house painting. Just kidding. You ever write, Suzanne? No, not really, I said. But I've been thinking about starting a diary. In the south of France, there is supposedly a special time known as the Night of the Falling Stars. On this night, everything is just so, perfect and magical. According to the French, the stars seem to pour out of the sky like cream from a pitcher. That was what tonight was. There were so many stars I could imagine I was up in heaven. Matt said, let's take a walk down to the beach, okay? I have an idea. I've noticed that you have a lot of ideas. Maybe it's the poet in me. He grabbed an old blanket, his CD player, and a bottle of champagne. We walked on a winding path, through high seagrass, finally finding a patch of sand to spread the blanket. Matt popped open the champagne and it sparkled and blinked in the midnight air. Then he pushed play, and the strains of Debussy whirled up into the starry night sky. Matt and I danced again, and we were in another time and place. Around and around we went, in sync with the rhythms of the sea, turning up fountains of sand, leaving improbable footprint patterns in our wake. I let my fingers play on his back, his neck, I let my hands comb through his hair. "I didn't know you could waltz," I said. He laughed. "I didn't know either." It was late when we made our way back up from the beach, but I wasn't tired. If anything, I was more awake than ever. I was still dancing, flying, singing inside. I hadn't expected any of this to happen. Not now, maybe not ever. It seemed 1,000 years from my heart attack in Boston Common. Mickey, I felt so lucky, so blessed. Matt gently took my hand and led me up the stairs to his room. I wanted to go with him, but still I was afraid. I hadn't done this in a while. Neither of us spoke, but suddenly my mouth opened wide. He had converted the top floor to one big, beautiful space, complete with skylights that seemed to absorb the evening sky. I loved what he had done to the room. He turned on the CD player in the bedroom. Sarah Vaughan. Perfect. Matt told me that he could count falling stars from his bed. One night I counted 16, a personal record. He came to me slowly and deliberately, drawing me toward him like a magnet. I could feel the buttons in the back of my blouse coming undone. The little hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. His fingers traveled down to the base of my spine, playing so very gently. He slipped off my blouse, and I watched it float to the floor, milkweed in a breeze. I stood so close to him, felt so close to Matt, barely breathing, feeling light